Hi everyone, welcome to a tactics video. This time I review my performance at a small RT with 18 plays yesterday just outside of London, where I actually did quite well with my combined arms detachment for Astra Militarum. So if you haven't played tournaments, an RT typically is a much smaller one. It typically runs for 1 day, 3 games, and you have maximum about probably 20 players. And depending, of course, where you live, it can either be they're always very relaxed. This one's very relaxed in Darkfire Cafe in St Albans, just outside of London, or maybe inside London, in the north of London. But 18 plays, and certainly it's not as like hyper competitive as if you go to a grand tournament where there's like 300 or 400 players. So I try to do this every couple of months to keep myself sort of fresh and play in a tournament setting. So you can see here the 18 players. This is all available on Best Coast Pairing. It's all publicly available. But the key thing is just to see the armies that have been played. Now, again, if you haven't played a tournament, they typically don't release the armies that have been played until everyone submitted lists and they've locked it. So it's not like you can basically see what everyone else is going to play and then choose an army to go against that. This one definitely in Darkfire, they don't release the armies that are playing until everyone knows their first matchup. So that actually controls if anyone sort of play the meta in inverted commas. So basically, this is the lists. This is the armies that were played. No one had idea what was going to be playing. So we've got Sisters of Battle, Custodes, Knights, Space Marines of some flavour, Orcs, Aldari, Guard, Jeff Hannon, Aldari, Grey Knights, Templars, Space Marines of some sort, GSC, Chaos Space Marines, Aldari, Space Marines, Tyranids, Tau, and more Space Marines. So obviously only 18 plays, but you're seeing a good representation for Aldari and Space Marines with Custodes, Chaos Space Marines, GSC, and Imperial Knights. Now, my first game was actually into Imperial Knights. Before we get to that, let's actually get to my list. So, as I've reflected on the new codex, I've played several of the new detachments, and basically every time I build a list, I just think, why don't I just play combined arms? Because I've tried mechanized, I've tried Tank Company, Hammer of the Emperor, and I just can't make them work with my brain. As I said, I sort of build a list and I'm like, why don't I just play combined arms? So I know it's quite boring, but this for me, this playstyle seems to work very, very well. And as I think about it, I think the single stratagem I miss the most when I play other detachments is the one where you can issue an order in your opponent's command phase, whatever that stratagem's called. That for me is crucial. Basically, I do things where like, I will move a unit onto an objective, and then to basically give them +1 OC in my command phase, or even a +1 save in my opponent's command phase for free via Ursula Creed, yeah? Because currently the wording is in every turn she can use a stratagem for free. So that for me was actually pretty key in a couple of key points. Well, there's definitely one point where it actually meant I held an objective because I gave some Catachan Jungle Fighters +1 save on a 4-up save as opposed to a 5-up save. It meant they were able to take a lot more damage than I thought they would. And then obviously lethal hits for me is just great. It's just a force multiplier across the relevant target. So this is the list, and you can see basically I called it New World Old Points because this was based on the old rules in inverted commas, the pre-balanced data. So that's when the rules were locked before that. But basically what I did is I built a list where I knew it would almost work from a points point of view with the new points cost. And you'll see there's a pretty key unit which has been excluded from my thinking. So having a look at the list, we've got Cadian Castellan, a command squad of Cadians with 2 Power Fists being the key thing. We've then got Gaunt's Ghosts, which are fantastic uppy downy, Regal Dawn Tank Commander, and Ursula Creed. So Ursula Creed is attached to the Cadian command squad. And then Battle Line, of course, is Cadian Shock attached to Creed and the command squad. It's then 2 Jungle Fighters and 2 Death Corps of Krieg infantry squads. And I actually forgot one of these at home. My first game I was like, oh my god, I've actually forgotten 10 miniatures, but luckily Atio gave me some Space Marines. We managed to work around it, but that was quite embarrassing. I forgot 10 miniatures straight away. It's in a Taurox. Within a Taurox there's always Catachan Jungle Fighters for the scout move. And then it's heavy weapon team of 3 mortars, and you can see 50 points. So I previously had 3 heavy weapon teams at 50 points because my thinking was, given they're so cheap, you can just chuck them around. You can screen your backfield or just chuck them into the center earlier because they're only 50 points. But knowing there's now 65 points, I chopped out 2 and just got 1 because I still think 1 has utility with mortars. It's in a Hellhound. It's then 2 Kazkin, 1 with the Cadian Castellan attached to it, Another one floating around. It's then Krieg Engineers, again with the old points, old rules. So they still had the indirect remote mine, which actually, we'll discuss it in a moment, didn't do much in any of the games. It's then 2 Luminous battle tanks with multi-melters. And then it is 1 Exterminator autocannon Luminous with plasma and a Scout Sentinel. So definitely a very rounded guard list. I would definitely hope you agree. And actually feels quite like the traditional combined armed list we've been playing for probably about like a year now. Now, clearly Scions don't appear in this, because basically I knew, obviously this was under the old points, that if I played Scions in this list, my entire list would go up by a lot more. So this list currently goes up by 15 points because of the heavy weapons squad. So by not taking Scions, I was always mentally positioning myself that my list doesn't change overall, besides 15 points here. Now, I'll talk about the overall structure of the list, but as I talk through the games, but the way I kind of approach it is I take a very balanced list of enough OC junk to basically turn off objectives for at least 2 turns, and then enough jiggery pokery around the place to basically still be able to maximize containment, extend battle lines, establish locus in the center or the backfield, engage all fronts, and basically make sure as much as possible my secondary game is performing as best as possible. And that wasn't always the case, but we'll have a look at that in a second. And the other one, which I'm becoming a humongous fan of, I can't believe I didn't get onto this more earlier, was Gaunt's Ghost. So their uppy-downy, I think, is fantastic. There were a couple of instances where actually were scoring secondaries, but actually, I think where they've actually got the most utility is basically sort of either reinforcing, in inverted commas, parts of the battlefield which I feel are sort of weakening, or just giving out-of-phase orders. Because definitely, again, you could give move, and then I think you can give them +1 OC as well, to make sure I've got that right and wasn't cheating there. But then also, of course, they obviously have got a little bit of DACA, so they can pick on things, but I think they're a fantastic tool to use in any list. And then, of course, Regular Dawn Tank Commander, 2 Luminous battle tanks, and Exterminator Luminous, obviously for the extra AP and the Hellhound stripping cover. Now, I was worried if I went into any super heavy armoured lists, I would struggle. But actually, as I think about this, reflecting on it, is given you've got lethal hits on those 4 main tanks, they're actually going to punch above their weight because they've got lethal hits. And definitely, as I talk about the first game, that kind of proved it to me that actually 4 tanks with lethal hits is enough into heavily armoured opponents. Now, the one I always struggle with, and as I saw the lists were released, or you could see them, is the one I wanted to avoid was Adeptus Custodes. I struggle massively into elite infantry lists. And that's where Scions definitely helped, and now we've lost that. I was worried about that, so I didn't play into Charlotte with her Custodes. But beyond that, as I looked at it, this didn't feel too nasty, but obviously Eldari was a bit of a question mark, because I'd only played them once so far in the new codex with Harlequins. I did well onto them, but I just didn't know what to expect. So that's my list. You can definitely see it's quite a boring, in inverted commas, new codex list, but it's something that certainly works for me, because I'm a very sort of straightforward 40k player. I like honest Warhammer. I like to play 5 turns. Don't table people. Don't do any skew list. I can't play skew list. I love loads of units. Love loads of trash, and this definitely felt warm and fuzzy for me. It's certainly what I got used to. Other one thing, just before I move into the actual games, is Kaz and I elected for obviously plasma, but then 2 hotshot volley guns, because the thinking there is I would prefer 5 hotshot volley gun shots per gun as opposed to 1 melter shot. Yeah, because then again, if you're going into elite infantry, you will be, and they've got an invul save or a feel no pain, you want more shots going into them with a lethal hits than 1 melter, which has to obviously hit, wound, and they've got to fail a save. So I prefer actually that. So that's one other sort of bit of tuning I did as well. So let's get into the actual games. So what I've done here is I've plonked down the missions, where my units started, and I'll do my best to talk about what my opponent laid out their army, and then roughly how the game sort of progressed. So the first mission was Terraform a Swift Action. Swift Action means you can put additional units into reserves. Swift, no, that's not swift action. Swift action is battle line units can advance or fall back and perform actions. So my first opponent, which I think I said before, was a lovely guy called Chris playing a Noble Lance Knights, Imperial Knights. So he had a Carustus Knight Lancer, that's basically the one with the big like lance and a 4-up invul save on a huge shield. Amazingly cool looking model. Almost bought one to paint it as a hobby project. It's then an errant. This basically is a super chainsaw sword and then a super melter thermo cannon. And when it gets within 12, it's getting melter 6. So basically, if it punches through armor, it just evaporates things. These models, I think this one has 25 wounds, this has 22 wounds, a rev toughness 11, 12. They've both got a 3-up, a 4-up invul save, and a 5-up invul save when they can spend a strategy to make it a 4-up invul save. And the army rule ability is they get an army-wide 6-up feel no pain. So definitely quite terrifying to look at. Now what I was most worried about with this list actually was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 armigers. Now at 140 points for the Warglaives, who have got a Thermal Lance, which is a 24-inch Strength 12 AP4 D6 Melter 4 weapon. It's quite terrifying. The Ripper Chain Cleaver will basically clean up infantry. And then the armigers, the Helverins, have got basically 2 autocannons. Be it AP1, they are 3 damage each, so they'll definitely punch their way through and tickle most armor. He's then supported by a Kalidas Assassin for Uppy Downy mission play, an Allied Sisters of Battle Immolator, which strips cover, and then also 10 Sisters, which can basically split into groups of 5 for, again, a bit of scoring. So having only played Knights a little bit, I asked some friends their perspective, and they said this looks quite well balanced. And definitely I was super worried about going into this list because given these are all battle line and given the first mission they can advance or fall back and perform actions, that's important. And also they're very high OC as well. And definitely the way I've lost into Knights before is if my opponent just floods the board with loads of bodies, armiger bodies, sits 2 on an objective, I know mathematically it's going to take probably 1.5 to 2 tanks to kill 1 armiger. Of course, one will do it if they fail their invul save, but definitely from my experience, you want to point at least 2 of them at one target and make sure it blows up. So let's now look at the actual deployment. So this here, I'll do my best to I'll blow it up a little bit more. But basically the key thing to start off with was in reinforcements, I had a Lemon Rice battle tank, Death Corps of Krieg battle line, and Kazkin with the Castellan as my reinforcements. Now that's partially to make sure I could fit everything, because actually I was running out of space, which often happens when you're playing guard. And I did want to have some sort of like a reactionary force to basically, you know, play the mission and obviously gum up and slow down my opponent's progression throughout the game. So this is, you can see the deployments here. So it's a Taurox with Jungle Fighters to scout move. It's a Scout Sentinel to scout move. And having practiced these deployments quite a lot, I knew the Scout Sentinel could tuck itself nicely in there. And also this Taurox could basically scout move up here, with a key issue potentially being it can be shot through here. Now I have actually forgotten to put Gaunt's Ghosts, but in this instance, I wasn't actually super confident to put them out, so I actually put them actually here, quite boring. Because do remember in your opponent's turn of their turn, you can pick them up, put them down, so actually where to deploy them in the first place doesn't really matter. And given Chris had no infiltrate or scout moves, there was no utility for putting him out in no man's land. Now, again, to think about this mission, having played it quite a few times, is ideally you want to terraform this objective quite early. And if you terraform an objective, you then score 2 victory points in every turn after. So if you do it in turn 2, you're basically getting low. You get an additional, you do it by turn 2, you get an additional 8 points. So it's actually a good way to get ahead. Now, you can see I was relying upon Taurox with Jungle Fighters, a Scout Sentinel to get on there, and because I went first, I basically pushed them up to get in here, this little nook and cranny. I then dumped out, given I went first, some Jungle Fighters along the wall here, and given you can get, I think you can get 4 on there, which means it's OC 8, which could become 12 with an order. It's a high amount of OC. And then I actually dumped in some Kazkin that basically jumped into the Taurox. So imagine this went like that. Scout Sentinel went like this. Basically the Kazkin went in there and the Jungle Fighters dropped out. Now the thinking over here is I wanted to have enough junk, enough high OC junk, being Catagen and Deathcore, to basically turn off Chris's any attempts to terraform as well. So basically his deployment was he put the big Lancer with a 4-up invul save over here, supported by an Armiger and an autocannon knight, likewise an autocannon mini knight here. He then had the flame tank with the ladies in it, and then obviously he debussed when he went first the sisters to hold the objective. Over here he had the knight errant, and then he had a couple of mini knights over here. So his deployment actually was relatively even. I was surprised he put the 4-up Lancer here. I would have thought he put it there. And that kind of told me, as I was deploying, because I had more stuff to deploy, that given he put the Lancer there, my chances of basically terraforming this early were quite low. So that's why I actually put more junk over here, because usually I just put like, you know, one Catagen squad here and a Hellhound there and the Deathcore elsewhere. But given I saw him did it like, right, I need to basically make sure he cannot terraform at any point, and he can't basically control anything in no man's land. Now the other thing I often do, which the first thing I do, is basically scout move the engineers, and the key trick obviously is you want to scout move them to be an inch off the wall so your opponent can't charge you through the wall. Given if you touch the wall you can be charged, but also if you're further than an inch away, that would be enough space for most bases to fit in there. So you always want to do that quite early, and given the engineers have got scouts a great utility. Now another one to think about is taking mortars. In some matchups they will do a lot of work, in some matchups they'll do absolutely nothing, and this was a match where they did absolutely nothing. So therefore that means is I put them relatively far up. I basically scout moved them to be an inch off the wall likewise, and then also to be a potential piece I would chuck out in the middle to score area denial, establish locus, or just get in the way of things. And that's obviously a decision I made knowing the enemy I was playing, the opponent I was playing has got knights. Now overall, this was a super tight match. As I said, basically what ended up happening is he marched out the 4-up invul save knights to sit on the objective, and I actually managed to kill it by basically pointing a Lemon Rust battle tank at it, the Exterminator Lemon Rust pointing through there. I then had this Lemon Rust basically come up and point an angle at it, and then he was like, I think he was like that. So I basically pointed 3 tanks at it, and I think I killed it after about 2 rounds of shooting, because I also reinforced the other Lehman Russ. I think I actually dropped it in from a rapid ingress at here to basically shore up this side and actually make sure that I could remove this model. So it took, I think I threw a grenade at it, I think I threw a remote mine at it via some Kazkin. I hit it with, I think, 3 or 4 tanks. I think he might have failed the charge. I managed to basically blow him up, but I couldn't actually terraform this till quite late, because he actually parked the Armiger, 2 Armigers on it, and actually the flame bus was deployed here, and that went on it as well. And I didn't manage to terraform this till quite late. Now over here, he basically put some sisters over here, which I then turned off with some jungle fighters. He then marched out an Armiger to basically massacre those guys. And basically then what I did is, you know, push out the Deathcore to again do it again. And at this point he had the Knight Errant on this side of the objective, and he then had an Armiger on it. But I managed to squeeze in enough bodies, which I could +1 OC, via Gaunt's Ghost landing here to basically turn off that objective. Now the Hellhound came out, basically slowed down his advance, and basically by the end of it, I think I had lost, he had the Knight Errant here, I had lost that, I had lost that, I had lost one of these, and by the end of it, I basically moved Cadians with Creed and basically put them onto this objective in my turn 5, because I went first, and basically tried to terraform as well. And by that point, he was too spread out to basically do anything. But it actually was a super close game. I actually was really getting quite nervous, but you can see I actually won by 1 point. So you can see primary, I actually managed to sort of keep it quite even. And I was quite surprised actually, because yeah, he got 8-8. I wonder how he got that, because I thought I managed to turn him off. It's because he out OC'd me hugely on this one. I just couldn't turn off the OC, because all I had at that point is I had Kazkin on there, which given they're only OC1, they become OC2 wasn't enough because he had the Knight Lancer there. But you can see obviously a very tight game. Literally came down to, I think, because I terraformed at the end. That is how I basically won this. A super close game into Chris, a great game. You can see obviously our scoring is quite even. But you can see that basically where I lost scoring potential was assassination and also sabotage, because what I tried to do was pick up Gaunt's Ghost in his turn 4, but given he didn't have much over here, I tried to terraform back here, sabotage back here and take his home objective. But he picked up his Khalid assassin, dropped it down, flamed them, charged Gaunt's Ghost, killed Gaunt's Ghost. What I actually should probably have done it over here. But anyway, so a close game, but great to win that. And definitely, I was speaking to Chris after, he probably wasn't as experienced as me. He said he massively underestimated all the OC junk, which basically meant I could control objectives. And also, I think he was super worried about my tanks. I mean, they obviously can be quite nasty, but from experience, again, I know they can't clear up like, as I said, a Lancer or a big errant. They cannot clean up one of those in one activation. You have to point absolutely everything at it. But yeah, so great to get that. Then it was next into Aldari. Now, I had no idea what Warhost did, and I kind of still don't. But I think Warhosts have like loads of jiggery pokery. I think they can, like, actually, I can't actually tell you, but I do remember that I was actually quite worried going into them. But then looking at the list, I think I played most of these. Now, I can't tell what any of these characters do. I just think they've basically been attached to all these units. But the key concept of Rob's list is he had loads of vehicles. He had 2 Falcons, 2 Fire Prisms, and 2 Wave Serpents. And the Fire Prisms can link fire and shoot stuff and get flat 6 damage. And then 2 of these are just flat transports, and 2 of them have got basically one where they -1 to wounds, but they've got no invul, I think one of them. Now, I looked at this and I was like, this is a lot of bodies, a lot of little squishy elf bodies. And I was like, that's good, because squishy elves are easy to kill. Now, the one thing also that was good for this mission, good for this matchup, was that this was the mission of Purge the Foe and Smoke and Mirror. So Purge the Foe is you kill or kill more, you get 4 or +4, and you hold or hold more. Now, given we are both super squishy lists overall, if I'd play, say, Custodes, or if I'd played the previous opponent, Chris, on this, I would have a very different experience, because obviously killing Custodes versus killing Guard, or killing Knights versus killing Guard, is a very different equation to play. And having played this mission enough times, holding more, as you can see the terrain here, is actually very challenging to do. But yeah, so this is my deployment. I've played this mission numerous times, and I basically know where most things are going to go. And you can basically, so it's, again, Cadians with Creed there, and you basically plonk here so she can, be giving orders as much as possible, but also units, as many units as possible are within 12 and can basically get free stratagems. And of course, you can then see the Taurox will scout move this way, the Scout Sentinel will scout move that way, the Kadskin scout moved, the Engineer scout moved as well, and basically tucked himself in there. And then likewise the Jungle Fighters. Now, he had some Striking Scorpions, which were placed here. And the crucial thing for this mission is actually going second is actually way better, because what that means is you know how much you need to kill. So basically in turn 1, Rob was a bit aggressive with his Striking Scorpions, and he basically moved him, because you can give him, I think this is what Warhost does, is you can choose all these different things. It's like orders. You can give one unit a specific order, and this one he gave them was extra movement. So basically they zipped their way over here, and then basically charge into the Engineer, trying to get that first kill. Now, for some reason, he didn't kill all 5. I was really surprised, and I think partially because he couldn't get them all to fight because of the charge. He couldn't actually get all of them. He only get 3 to fight, and I thought these guys were dead. I was like, these guys are definitely dead because they're being attacked by Striking Scorpions, which I thought were quite good in combat, which they probably are. But unfortunately, one guy survived. At this point, I was like, right, given they're stuck there in the open because all these vehicles are looking at them, I paid for insane bravery to make sure they don't fail the battle shock test, because if they fail battle shock and fall back on a 1 and 2, they die. Yeah, so basically by passing battle shock, if they fell back, it didn't matter. So they fell back, and basically I got to blat some poor striking scorpions with most of my army. Now this again, he had the, I don't know if it's an army rule or a detachment rule, he could basically move them, but even so, he basically, you know, I blatted them of a load of stuff over here, and then he basically moved them, but still he was facing into a load of Dakar. Yeah, and the other thing again from this is that I think everything in the army had like, all the dudes had like a 5-up invul save or a 6-up invul save, so they were deceptively sort of resilient, these little elves. But as we'll get into it, it didn't sort of work out that way. Now, the overall shape of the game is, I actually put Gaunt's Ghost here. I don't have him here, but I put him here, which was quite risky. But I wanted to basically place him there because you can see from a deployment point of view, where I'm probably the weakest is here. And from experience, this is a ginormous threat of rapid ingress or just even deep strike, because obviously you don't have much here. Now, Rob, on the other hand, he basically put like quite a lot of stuff was placed here, and around there. And basically in the second turn, because I actually got a kill in turn 1 because I killed the striking scorpions, but poor Rob didn't, is he basically started to march out some of his transports. And at that point, I basically was able to basically, you know, get the Rogal Dawn to look that way, either scout Sentinel or poke its little nose out, give reroll once to hit. I reinforced a Lemon Rust battle tank in this corner here, and also making sure that it's always in cover. I basically started slamming all these transports and vehicles quite early. Likewise, actually, no, I didn't. That wasn't reinforced there. This guy just drove his way up with an order, poked his nose round, and basically could see through there. And then also he had a fire prism come here. And again, from experience, I know you've got to be super careful of this angle here, because I think in turn 2, he trottled it up, placed it here, and given it's like a crab, it's got all these bits sticking out, it firmly was visible here. So this exterminator actually was in there. That drove there. This one came in from reinforcements and drew a straight line into that poor old Bright Lance super shooter car, whatever it's called. So that was definitely, I feel this chap probably didn't have as much experience with this map, because I played this map loads. I know the angles. I've learnt the hard way, like angles like that, but that allowed me to kill basically more for most of the turns. Now, by the end of it, unfortunately, I managed to basically almost table this poor fella. You know, he basically let me, which was fine because we were running out of units, to reinforce the Kazkin here and blast stuff off his home objective and basically kill him off that objective, which basically meant at some point I held more. So yeah, so I mean, out of this, I'm getting the sense with Aldari, and this is a pragmatic assessment, which has been as polite as possible, is that in the right hands, Aldari will be horrible to play into. Like, they'll just pull your trousers down and give you a good old bottom spanking. But for players who aren't as experienced or as talented, it's an army which probably won't reward them in inverted commas. And definitely, as I've played a couple of games in Aldari now, is that unless the pilot is very experienced, they're not going to do as well as they're probably sort of shook out to be. But as we look at the third game, which Spoiler was into, Aldari is a very different experience. And again, just being sort of realistic, is that I don't think this poor fella had as much experience with Aldari at this point. Because by the end of it, I basically tabled him. He just had a Wave Serpent here with some dudes. I actually charged Gaunt's Ghost into these dudes, managed to kill most of them, but then basically the character killed him. And by the end of it, he literally had I think 2 units, and I had still a load of stuff. So the scores on the board were basically 96 for me and 60 for poor Rob. And you can see basically I killed more or held more across every single turn. So I maxed my primary. And then likewise, because I had just, you know, full board domination, I actually managed to basically almost max my primary as well. With the only area denial being basically I drew that on a turn. We basically parked a transport full of Dire Avengers, who were the super cool looking dudes. So to blow up a transport, they all dropped out. They got hammered with las guns, but then the character survived, so I couldn't actually score it. And that's another one is Yeah, I know also now they can basically drive transports, drop guys out to shoot, and they can get back in their vehicle. I don't know if it's a stratagem or an ability. But of course, also you can turn off Overwatch. That's the key thing I took away from the new Eldari Codex. But yeah, I was lucky to get that. And again, in this matchup, mortars were just, they don't usually do much, but in a game where their toughness 3, 1 wound, with 1 wound being key, they will eventually just pick away at things. So again, it's like, if there was like 1 dude left, he'd get all 3, just bang it on his head to kill him. And in a game where you're rewarded for killing stuff, it's absolutely fantastic. Right, so the next game was again into Eldari on the mission Take and Hold, which is a score 5, 10, 15 for holding 1, 2, or 3 with hidden supplies, which basically has got 6 objective markers across the board. Now the list I was playing into, the opponent and the army, was again Eldari into a lovely guy called John with Seer Council. Now, Seer Council, as I understand it, basically you roll a whole lot of dice. I think you roll 6 dice, and for each number of the dice, you can use a stratagem for free. So essentially it's like 6 CP for free. Now I can't tell you what they all did. I forget them all, but the key what I remember is, and I think it's the army rule, is they can always turn off Overwatch. And the other thing is they can basically pick up a unit in their movement phase and redeploy them. So it's not like uppy downy, literally uppy downy in the same activation. That was quite tasty because, yeah, to be able to just pick up a unit and drop them somewhere else, respecting deep strike rules, is huge. It's just like infinite movement. Yeah. Now, looking at this list, I actually was like, oh fuck, this is going to be quite uncomfortable because an Avatar of Cain is horrid. That thing is meant to be a god, so he's pretty terrifying. Eldrad Ulfrin is some like crazy like wizard guy. Fulgrim is the guy who leads all the Bright Lance dudes, or the Melter guys, a Spirit Steer, and then it's Storm Guardians for Battle Line. Fire Dragons are the terrifying ones, so a blob of 5. Howling Banshees, Rangers for the Infiltrate. A pesky little indirect platform. Who would have thought it'd be pesky, given we play Astra Militarum? It's then a Warlock Council, Warlock Skyrunners, which basically are those guys but on jet bikes. It's only 1 of each. Warp Spiders, which can basically move 24, shoot but can't charge. And then 3 White Wraith Lords, which I've never seen before, which basically are like the guys with like the little spirit token things in a little like a robot. And they've got a 2-up save. Their toughness 10. They've got like 10 wounds, and they're actually got a fair bit of stabbiness. So they've got 2 Bright Lances, which are super las cannons, 2 Flamers, and they've got enough melee that they will killing things up. And having spoken to John, this is probably the best unit in the Codex is Wraith Lords, just because they're pointed so well. And they're basically like liminalized battle tanks, but can do combat as well. So very good. So I looked at this, I was like, ugh, this is looking like it's going to probably be quite nasty to go into. So deployment. Again, having played this mission numerous times, this mission is where you want to turn off this objective as long as possible, because this is what the tactical players, well, I'm tactical, call your natural expansion objective for my opponent, and this for me. So you want to have enough, like for me, my game plan is you want to have enough junk here that you can turn it off at least 1 or 2 turns. And you need to find a way to basically hold this objective. Because this is obviously, actually the Hellhound was over here. This is obviously your expansion objective if you want to be all tactical. So in this case, I knew my mortars actually would do work, and given that John had the nasty little indirect piece, I had to basically place it outside of 48 inches, but given the mortar's got 48 inches, it basically it could plink shells into basically the entire part of the board, but John decided to put it like back here because I wanted to partially screen out his backfield. So you can see Taurox for the scout move, Scout Sentinel here, so they can basically zoom their way up there, zoom their way up there, and in this mission I went first, which I was okay with because it means I could set up all my scout moves. But yeah, engineers sort of basically go up there, inch off the wall. Kazkin basically here. And you can actually see here that I had both of the Deathcore units on the table because I knew If he, for whatever reason, wanted to be quite aggressive and try and hold 3 at some point by putting units here, I needed a way to quickly turn that off. So the Death Core, both Death Core blobs were on the board. So you can see Jungle Fighters, Battle Line, Death Core, Battle Line to be sent out to die for the Emperor here, supported by Limit Rust Battle Tank and a Hellhound. With the Rogal Dawn basically sitting here, because this is the only place it can truly fit. Autocannon, Limit Rust, and of course Cadians there. So upon deployment, he basically put some ranges here and he put them on the objective, which means I had to turn off that objective turn 1. I couldn't let him have stuff on there to basically score at turn 2. There, he had all the Wraith Lords, the big sort of knight dudes, all here, and the Avatar Arcane centrally deployed. He had obviously quite a packed deployment zone, just like me, because it's got loads of bodies. But crucially, he had some warp spiders here, alongside a character, a ginormous blob of what are the guys, the Fire Warriors? The blob of 10, the blob of 5, the Fire Warriors, the Fire Dragons, sorry, with their nasty melter guns, or the fusion guns. And I think he put them there because basically he can pick them up and drop them, given he can do that ability. But the key thing was, as I looked at his deployment, I was like, right, he's going to go heavy here because he's got loads of Wraith Lords to walk up and shoot stuff. So again, I was like, I probably want to put Death Core here to make sure I can do something about this. So yeah, I went first. I basically had to send out some Jungle Fighters to die for the Emperor. So they got move. They ran out here. And basically, I then put the mortars into the scouts that were there. And he can then reactive move, which again, I don't know is if it's an army rule or if it's a detachment rule, where when they've been hit, they can then move. So he moved them, and he basically left them so they were close enough, because he only rolled a small move, for me to charge them as well. So I think I killed 2 or 3 guys with mortars, and then I basically killed 1 guy in combat. And basically, because I rolled a small charge roll, and again, I'm learning this stuff, is I managed to basically get enough models to be legally within engagement range, to be in engagement range as much as possible, but also within 24 inches of Ursula Creed, who was positioned here, to be able to give an order in my opponent's command phase of take cover, which is +1 save, which means they've now got a 4-up save. No, because then what happened is I basically had the Limit Rust battle tank threatening here, basically saying if you move your dudes out, they're going to get bladdered by a nasty battle cannon. And he decided to basically plate kite KG. But then I was super surprised how much little damage the Wraith Lords did. He didn't flame with them because he basically wanted to charge them. I think only 1 poor old Wraith Lord made it in there, failed a load of hits, a load of wounds. I think he only killed like 4 dudes, which meant 6 dudes were on the objective, and basically meant in turn 1 in turn 2 I held 1, 2, 3. So, and then basically because they were there, it basically meant that in John's turn 2, he scored 5 on primary, I scored 15 on primary. So that was a humongous start for me, a fantastic start. And with that kind of start, I had a bit of confidence going into this. Now, the other thing I then did in turn 2 is, given he didn't move out his warp spiders at all, he actually put 1 warp spider squad here to do cleanse on 2 objectives, and they got hammered by loads of stuff because they were sat in the open. But given he didn't push out here, it allowed me to basically plonk out a Limit Rust battle tank from reinforcements here. And because he had them, basically, I managed to smash the poor old warp spiders with a Limit Rust battle tank and basically remove them from the game. I think there was like 1 guy left with it, which then got hit by mortars and killed them. In response, he then basically moved his super blob of fire dragons, and they evaporated his Limit Rust. And I was like, that's okay, because again, I've pushed him back with a Limit Rust battle tank, and I've killed warp spiders, which are very good for mission play. So that was a trade I was prepared to make. But basically how the game sort of overall went is I basically held this objective all game. He managed to basically take this back off me. He basically killed the Jungle Fighters, they died. Some Death Core guys went out, they died. Limit Rust battle tank went out, it died. The Hellhound went out, it also died, which was fine. It got killed by, it actually passed a load of saves from Fire Dragons, which had us both laughing. But the Avatar came over, chopped it in half, it blew up. And actually, I'd killed whatever that character, the fire dragon character is called, Fulgrin. I murdered him with the chem flamer and a multi-melter, so he died from that. He then basically came back up again, because he stands back up. I then tank shocked him, left him on a wound. And then when the Hellhound blew up with a D6 explosion, it killed him from explosion and did a load of wounds to the Avatar. So we really enjoyed both of that, both of us are giggling. But he basically held this because he had enough junk to hold it, and also with the Wraith Lords. And by the end of it, we'd both taken pretty heavy casualties. I had to basically march up the Cadians to sort of stop the Avatar walking onto my home field. And then he basically, again, because he went second, did the right thing to basically push out a load of dudes here, and also a Wraith Lord there. So at the end of it, he managed to max his primary. But given I had that strong start, I managed to cling on to a victory, but you can see it got bloody close towards the end, yeah. But you can see my primary was really strong. And that early start, with those jungle fighters surviving on this objective, partially because I gave them +1 saves, so saving on a 4-up. And then also, luckily, the poor old the Wraith Lord who went into them didn't kill them. But actually, that being said, I think John probably miscalculated this because there were 10 dudes alive, a single Wraith Lord wasn't going to kill them. It's probably been better to sort of hit them with flamers and kill them. But even then, even if I left with 2 dudes alive, it basically means I've got OC4. He probably had maybe, say, I don't know, OC3, maybe 4 get onto the objective. Again, means I would have used Insane Bravery. I would have given them +1 OC, and suddenly you got OC6, which at this point in the game was quite hard to turn off. But again, you can see obviously the primary gave it to me. But interestingly, you can see my secondary play was quite weak here. With Storm Hostile objective, I think at this point in turn 4 being quite hard, because the only objective he hold I could get to was this one here where the Avatar came was sat in the objective, and I was like, right, that's just not going to happen. But again, great for me to get that. I was very happy. It was a fantastic battle with John. We had a really good game. Both of us thinking, you know, and definitely, and again, I think it's very important to stay to your opponent. And again, all the games I play are fantastic. Is, you know, every game I sort of say, make sure we're here for a good time, a competitive game. Let's have no gotchas. Let's be very clear. If I do something, tell me what they can do. I'll tell you likewise. You know, I'll ask what reactive moves you got, but do make sure you're very clear what you can do. And that's definitely how me and John played the game. It's like, I would be very clear. It's like, my intention is that by placing this tank, this Hellhound here, it can't be seen by this angle here. Is that true? Do you agree? And he's like, yep. So which basically means in his turn, he wouldn't shoot it because he couldn't see it. And likewise, he would say things like, oh, be aware I've got this ability. I can, you know, +1 AP, blah, blah, blah. So a fantastic engagement with John. And again, I think John was probably more experienced than Rob in the previous game, which was cool. And I could really feel John was at the cusp of making this list wildly hard to play into, because there's a lot of jank he could do. Obviously, the easiest one is turn off Overwatch, but the uppy downy on the on any unit at all except the Avatar was just impossible to counter. But it did also, you know, I did sort of make sure I was giving myself loads of space. You know, sending out, like, I actually sent some Deathcore out turn 2. And I basically want to movement block anybody moving here, but then I actually changed my mind, strung them that way, but also strung them out as far as possible, that my Limb and Rust battle tank at that point wasn't going to get deep struck by some nasty fire dragons to melter it. But yeah, so really good game with John. And again, I managed to squeeze the victory there, again, because my early primary lead. And then again, if you get lucky, you can extend battle lines, containment turn 1. That is just mwah. That's an 11 points off the bat. You should definitely be scoring for Astra Militarum. I've got loads of crap. But then obviously John had a tougher time. But yeah, it was definitely on the primary. So yeah, happy with that performance, which actually meant I managed to come, if we go back to this and go placings, I actually managed to come third. So I was, yeah, chuffed. I got third. I managed to come second previously in December. In this tournament, that was back when we had Aquilons and Bolgrams, which were, well, not Bolgrams, but Aquilons, so a very different sort of play style. But yeah, super sort of happy to do that. You can see obviously James won with Aldari, and I know James is a very good player. He's a very, very strong player, and you can see his scores are just crazy strong. And Martin, which I know quite well, did quite well also with Space Marines as well. So yeah, so happy to go with that. Very happy I managed to make my favourite of Combined Arms work. Again, an RT from a pragmatic point of view is not hyper competitive. This is not a massive GT with like 400 players and the world's best playing, but still it is indicative that there definitely still is potential with combined arms. And yeah, I'm probably just going to settle back to combined arms. I'm not going to try mechanize Homer the Emperor. I'm very boring. I'm not going to play Siege. I'm not going to play Recon. I'm just going to play combined arms because I just love a rounded list. I love lethal hits. And again, that stratagem, when your opponent's command phase, you can issue an order, I think is massively undervalued by a lot of people. So, you know, again, if you haven't used it, do try it out, but you've got to obviously create the scenario. So yeah, so then obviously from a matchup point of view, you know, Aldari, I'd say is a good matchup. Knights, pragmatically speaking, probably isn't a good matchup, but I managed to squeeze this. And again, having a look at my list, thought about it is, you've only got one Rogue Dawn tank commander, 2 Limos battle tanks, and a exterminator autocannon Limon Russ. Theoretically, into that list with Knights, I didn't have enough firepower, but given I got lethal hits, that was the force multiplier. Because genuinely, you know, hitting a big old bad Knight Errant or the Lancer, who's toughness 12 with a battle cannon, wounding on 5s is pretty uncomfortable, but given you got lethals, and you're getting reroll ones to hit, or full rerolls if it's on objective, that is enough to give you enough wound rolls, yeah? So yeah, super happy with that. Obviously happy to win 3 games and get third in an RT. So very proud to do that and obviously boost up the guard stats for combined arms. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. So how are you going out there, be it casual or competitive play? Which detachments are you finding the best for you, which you're having the most success with? I'd love to hear from you. As always, if you enjoy my channel, want to support me, you can do so with a like, comment, or by subscribing. Joining my Patreon platoon, where you get a specific miniature painted for you, which will be in the roll call at the end of each video, or becoming a channel member. You can also buy some channel dice. I've had these printed by the great guys and girls at Bystander in the US. Some beautiful, they're camouflage dice with my channel logo. How to buy them is in the description below. Or you could just watch any of my other YouTube channels. I'm a true variety hub covering everything from the tactical aspect of 40k, bringing a relaxed but competitive approach to 40k. The lore of Astra Militarum, and also hobby videos including painting, kit bashing and assembly. You can see behind me is the setup to paint some Def Corps engineers. I've got one chap ready to go there. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Any questions, comments or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. And super thanks to all my subscribers and patrons. I really appreciate your support to make me more motivated to make more guard videos for you, the guard community. Let's get your bayonet sharp, lights gun oiled, faith in the Emperor strong. Patreon platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn. Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten. Tank Commander Mitchell. Lieutenant Burke Nilsson. Lieutenant Smith. Colour Sergeant DuPont. Sergeants Adal, Scott, the Colonel Merrill, Veteran Gibson, Hall, Lundeen, Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Easingwood, Hills, Malik, Nitin, Nguyen, Medicae, Rolfe, Tonkin, Conscript England, Evan Goodwin, Honorary Members Bolgram King, Psycha Smith, Sion Gaylard, Aquilin Nassine.